Todd Richards here, Roots, Hearts,
and Soul.
Stefan and I are launching this podcast based off cookbook Roots, Heart, and Soul by myself, Todd Richards, with a great help from Chef Stefan, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Oh, you stop, you. We have such a beautiful history together.
I mean, it's crazy. Really, what people are going to get from this podcast is telling the story of Afro people, Afro cuisine.
We're going to be telling the story of the Pan-African diaspora.
Roots, heart, soul of the world, as we say. We are launching in a couple of weeks here, some terrific guests. Stay tuned. Follow us on all our social media at Chef Todd Richards in all formats. Chef Stefan, what's yours?
ChefStefan.it, AYITI. This is the correct way to say Haiti.
Well, we're getting education already.
So if you want to find out more, if you want to listen to great stories being told by amazing, amazing culinary talents, we're going to be hearing stories from Africa all the way to the Caribbean, all the way to the Americas. It's going to be something special.
Giving everyone the good rhythm, the good vibes.
Yeah, baby.
We look forward to seeing everyone. Talk soon.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey, it's Elizabeth, a reporter here on Meat 3. I'm hosting a hypothetical summer dinner party, and you're invited. On the menu is focaccia with blackened Spanish Roja garlic, Ivan tomato and lemon clean peach salad with ripped Creole cream cheese, and blackened Rhode Island white chicken with New Mexico tomatillo and ogeechee lime salsa verde. For dessert, I'll be making Kona coffee ice cream sandwiches. The star ingredients in every dish are going extinct. This very dinner party may not be possible to recreate in the future due to industrialization, climate change, and the loss of agricultural biodiversity and small-scale food production systems. I found these ingredients in the living resource, The Ark of Taste, a project of the Slow Food Movement. The Ark of Taste catalogs foods facing extinction with the intention to preserve these unique species through recognition and celebration. So come, hypothetically, and appreciate these special foods that could be lost to us forever. Celebrate their unique deliciousness and help promote their preservation. Oh yeah, and it's BYOB. Bonus points if the grape varietal is going extinct.
Extinction is natural. Species went extinct long before humans existed and will continue to after we're gone. Our eating habits have accelerated this process, though, contributing to the disappearance of countless species from the woolly mammoth to the dodo bird. But we've also lost cultural practices, cooking techniques, and entire foodways. Biodiversity and food heritage are deeply intertwined with identity and essential for a sustainable future. Without them, we risk a monotonous and vulnerable food system susceptible to disease and climate change. But today on Meat and 3, we aren't looking back to the past. We're standing firmly in the present and looking towards the future. We're exploring the ways we can honor and preserve what we have now, ensuring a vibrant and resilient food system for generations to come. From our stinkiest breads to ancient agricultural practices, we're diving deep into the flavors and traditions that connect us to our ancestors and the land. I'm H. Conley, and this is Meat and 3.
Meat and 3.
Meat and 3.
Meat and 3.
One meat, 3 sides.
Food, news, and storytelling.
A square meal. For your ears.
Meat and 3.
First up, Sophia Hooper revisits an episode of HRN's Dyed Green with guest Dan Saladino. Dan is the author of Eating to Extinction, which examines the industrialized food system and records foods that are at risk of being lost forever. Here's some of that conversation.
We've come up with this amazing system of producing these incredibly cheap sources of meat. Well, it's such a short period in our food history. It's barely a blip, and we don't even know where this experiment is going to lead us.
I have to admit, I don't always think critically when it comes to food preservation. I am nostalgic, and I want to save it all simply because it exists. And that's a fair way to feel, but Dan Saladino is here to remind me of the broader reasons to preserve our food.
It's important that we understand how long it took for diversity to emerge.
The very first plants that would eventually become our crops started out 3.5 billion years ago. The animals that eventually became our livestock started out as specialized cells 800 million years ago, all evolving to fit in with the needs of their local ecosystems. And for 300,000 years, humans have been shaping that evolution.
In that massive timescale of how our foods came into existence, just 150 years of pretty much an industrialization of food systems, of people leaving the land, and actually science and technology coming to the fore. There are complex systems that we still don't even understand.
Through factory-farmed beef and dairy and vast monocultures of corn, beans, and soy, we have disrupted those natural processes dramatically. We might feel like we've gained resilience because we can get food from all over the world all year round, right in our supermarkets. But
if we destroy or lose some of that wild diversity, we really do lose a safety net, because that's where the traits we will need for the future in terms of disease resistance, tolerance to pests and drought will be found, are being found.
We are optimizing for efficiency, reliability, and profit. Food is a commodity.
And we've devalued it so much that it's become fuel, and a highly expensive fuel at that, because again, these costs that we're building up in terms of our health and planetary health.
But food can still be more than a commodity if we decide that it is. That requires some legwork on our part. It's not only the meticulous documentation and filing of seeds, the genetic modification for resilience, the green technology making its way into our fields that we need. It's the willingness to submit ourselves in some small way to the natural cycle, even though we no longer have to. I have more ideals than answers, but eating to extinction is a reminder of some of those ideals, of how preserving our plants is a path to preserving our relationship with food.
Salt rising bread is an anomaly in our white bread world. It's pungent, dense, and undeniably divisive, but it's also beloved by a small, dedicated group of bakers. So why does this bread stir up such strong feelings? And why do they continue to make it? To find out more about this peculiar and precious bread, Jessica Gingrich talked to the keepers of this disappearing tradition.
Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Can you smell that?
People tend to have very definite ideas about what they think salt rising bread smells like, from baby's diapers to throwing up.
Which, smells like something you want to avoid, not something you want to actually eat.
It's not a pleasant yeasty smell, which is what people are expecting from bread. It's kind of acrid in the beginning and very pungent, and it will smell your whole house up.
Here's the thing about salt rising bread, though. People love it fiercely. They'll drive hours for a loaf, take days to bake it themselves, and write books and letters about its importance in their lives. There's something about this bread.
Salt rising bread is unique in that it makes its own rising. You make a starter, which is what makes the bread rise, and that's a combination of cornmeal and milk or potatoes and hot water, and you set it overnight and it bubbles, and that has a rising power to it.
So what's behind this stink?
It turns out that in the case of salt rising bread, it's not yeast at all. It's a bacterium called Clostridium, which is associated with wounds of all things and other kinds of bad things like food poisoning. But the researchers on this particular strain of Clostridium have not found any indication that its presence in salt rising bread is a risk to anyone.
Salt rising bread is a specific form of fermentation. You're making this concentration of a bacterial culture, so it's going to smell strong. But then as you begin to work with it and make the sponge and make the dough, the smell changes into something that's more comforting and warm. And by the time you bring it out of the oven, it's this fantastic bread-like smell with some cheese hints.
It appears to be the process of making cheese and bread at the same time. Now, I know that's an oversimplification, but in many ways, I think it explains why you get kind of a cheesy aroma along with a normal bread loaf.
This unique fermentation method is a testament to the ingenuity of pioneer women in the 1700s. In rural Appalachia, without access to yeast, they discovered a way to use bacteria to make bread. But it's a difficult process, one that even seasoned bakers can struggle to master. So why do they bother?
The greatest gift from learning how to make salt rising bread was to see the great connection that the bread had to my mother and to her siblings. While they were still living, periodically I would make a loaf and mail it to them. To them, it was akin to getting a present from their deceased mother.
I grew up eating it when I was a child in southern West Virginia. My grandmother made it, and I loved her, and I loved her salt rising bread, and feel privileged to have had a grandmother who gave me a tradition that I cherish and that I have passed on to my children.
The answer, it seems, lies in the stories, the memories, and the deep emotional connections that salt rising bread evokes. This sentiment is echoed in letters collected by the Salt Rising Bread Project.
People just wrote us wonderful, heart-wrenching stories about their relationship to salt rising bread.
Just a day before our mother took sick, she made 8 to 10 loaves of salt rising bread. When we kids knew that Mom was not coming home from the hospital, we rationed every piece of bread among us because we knew we would never get her bread again.
My grandmother would always wait for a hot, sunny spell to make the bread. She'd rise the bread on the back lawn under a red and white checkered dish towel. This seemed like alchemy to a kid. A pinch of soda, the potato, the accompanying odd aroma. When my grandmother died, I immediately told my family that I wanted her recipe box so that I could have her salt rising bread recipe.
This unique bread, born of bacteria and steeped in Appalachian tradition, is layered with meaning and memory. But it's also disappearing from our tables. As our world becomes increasingly fast-paced and convenience-driven, can this tradition survive?
As modern society evolves, it's losing these variances in food. It's losing the slow food techniques. We're too busy. Technology is pushing us to work faster, to pay attention to other aspects of our lives. And salt rising bread, working with wild bacteria, is its own rhythm.
I think there are some impediments to making it commercially successful. I never found a way to create a starter so that you could make it quicker the next time you want to make it. It seems like you really have to start from square one.
It's a finicky bread, and you're dealing with wild bacteria. They always differ slightly. And when you're doing commercial production, it's very hard to have those kind of variables in the timing of your bread making. And like I said, the flavor is complex and it changes. And sometimes the bread raises better than other days. Sometimes the flavor is stronger than other days. And what's wrong with a little variety in life?
It's a lot of work and it's tricky and you have to persevere and people have to really love it and have a reason to do it, to work that hard for something. And if you aren't brought up with it or have some connection to it, I think you just don't know that it's something that you should carry on. But I'm thankful that I had that in my life because it just is a big part of me. In fact, my grandmother used to kid me that the reason I love salt rising bread was because my initials are SRB, Susan Ray Brown.
Salt rising bread is a labor of love and legacy, as long as there's hands willing to knead the dough and hearts willing to share its warmth. This stinky, special bread will continue to rise generation after generation.
We'll be right back with more Meat and Three after a brief break.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystems. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangelands experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that address grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Welcome back to Meat and Three. Sometimes preservation doesn't mean just clinging to the things we've managed to keep. It means bringing them back from obscurity. Addison Austin Liu is here to tell us about the return of one such long-lost pint-sized tuber.
The Four Corners region is a vast area of high desert red rock country in the American Southwest. This is where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico all meet. The sparse vegetation and limited rainfall doesn't scream agricultural wonderland, but this area is home to a petite potato that humans have eaten for over 10,000 years. On a quest to learn more, I attended Wild Potato Days, a festival in Escalante, Utah, dedicated to the Four Corners potato, also known as Solanum jamesi. Over an all-you-can-eat stuffed baked potato bar, I met botanist Bruce Pavlik. I sat down with him and his partner Lisbeth Louderback, curator of archaeology at the Natural History Museum of Utah, for coffee to chat about this tiny tater.
Escalante Valley used to be called Potato Valley, in that there used to be this native potato.
This was prior to the cultural destruction brought by colonialism and introduction of the so-called white potato.
But nobody seemed to think that the potato was still around, like especially in Escalante. Like, it just wasn't. It was kind of a thing of the past. Relic. Yeah.
Despite not knowing where to find them, oral knowledge of the tuber had been passed down through regional Native American tribes. The grandparents of living elders would tell stories of eating them with bentonite clay to reduce their distinctive bitterness, or grinding them into flour for bread. Louderback had a breakthrough when she found starch granules on ancient grinding stones in the area. From there, she was able to identify the species and determine the timeline of its culinary use. While she and Pavlik were searching for sites where the plant still grew, another pattern began to appear.
We kind of noticed that the potatoes kind of in southern Utah and in southern Colorado and northern Arizona all grew next to archaeological sites.
This discovery led to the realization that people had been actively moving the potato around the region for millennia, an intentional act to increase the abundance of a resource. With this ancestral connection in mind, Pavlik began to experiment with different growing methods and distributing the potatoes to tribal members.
And I think our hope was for the tribes to really take it on and grow it and distribute it how they ever want, but that they would be the gatekeepers of the potato and the knowledge and everything.
Returning this potato to its rightful stewards is what indigenous, women-led groups call rematriation, a process of restoring sacred relationships between people and their ancestral land. Pavlik gave me a seedling while I was in Escalante. It now grows in my garden. As an indigenous adoptee removed from my ancestral homeland in South America, it is an honor to play a small part in reviving this precious potato. The Andes Mountain region I'm from is renowned for their biodiverse potatoes, so this felt very full circle for me. Supporting Indigenous food sovereignty, no matter where I am, is integral to my culinary practice and the journey of reconnecting to my own indigeneity. I can hardly wait for the fall harvest.
For our last story, it's time to take a look beyond our recipes and foods. Sam Girardi explores a farming system whose preservation protects not only ancestral foodways, but entire ecosystems. Let's travel to the Xochimilco borough of Mexico City.
Picture this. You're gliding over a still lake, twilight blanketing your sight. On either side of you are islands filled with lush greenery bursting with abundance. Willow trees teeming with birds tower above you. And as you round a corner, 2 volcanoes enter your sight, the brilliance of the sun erupting between them. This is the start of your day at Hecho en Xochimilco. It's an agro-tourism program that
takes people deep into the Chinampero system in a different kind of experiences.
That's Rafael Gonzalez, a Mexico City-based biologist who works with Hecho. The Chinampero system is a complex of floating gardens called chinampas. Invented by the Xochimilco people 1,200 years ago and expanded by the Aztec Empire, chinampas are one of the most efficient means of farming on the planet. But why is that? It comes down to location. Before Mexico City existed, the Valley of Mexico was filled with huge lakes. The surrounding mountains and volcanoes funneled nutrients and ash into the water below, which created incredibly fertile lake mud. The Xochimilco people used this to their advantage. They built rafts, put them on the lake, piled lake mud on top, and planted ahuejote trees on the corners to secure these man-made islands. Using traditional farming methods, crops grown on these chinampas are 95% efficient, without any additional chemicals or fertilizer.
It's like cheating, because everything that you will toss into the ground, it will grow.
The Chinampero system is also an oasis of wildlife, housing 11% of Mexico's biodiversity and 2% of the world's. All of these unique factors led to Xochimilco being classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. Unfortunately, this history, these species, they're all in danger of eradication. After colonizing Mexico, Spain drained the massive lakes in the basin. Nowadays, the lake system is only 10% of its original size. Droughts continue lowering the water levels, and constant pollution enters from the city. But more than anything,
one of the main reasons that it's disappearing, it's because that people doesn't know about it. You can ask anyone in Mexico City about Xochimilco, and they will only answer that it's the trajineras.
These are the colorfully decorated flat-bottom boats that ferry tourists around Lake Xochimilco, serving drinks and blasting music. They've been a popular attraction for a little over a century and receive much more attention than the chinampas. And though the Chinampero system has UNESCO protection, this also means that the system cannot be significantly expanded to scale up food production. So, drawing eyes and visitors to these incredible gardens may be the best chance we have at preserving them. With that in mind, if you ever find yourself in Mexico City, Rafa and I invite you to go on your own journey in the chinampas.
Get to know the real Xochimilco, the real part of what this place is.
Take in this paradise, hidden in plain sight.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. Learn more about the guests and topics we touched on this week by checking out our show notes. This episode of Meat and Three was reported by Elizabeth Fisher, Sophia Hooper, Jessica Gingrich, Addison Austin Liu, and Sam Girardi. Our lead producer on this episode was Jessica Gingrich, with support from Sophia Hooper and Hannah Chenard. Meat and Three is produced by Taylor Early and me, H. Conley. I also audio engineered this episode. Our theme song was composed by Breakmaster Cylinder. Thanks to RJB and Kelsey Gentwaite for reading our Salt Rising Bread letters. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Meat and Three is powered by Simplecast. Meat and Three is a production of Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org and follow us at heritage_radio. And please stay in touch. Whether you have a story idea or just like to say hey, write us at ideas@meatand3.nyc. That's all spelled out.